Hi guys, I'm Emma, and this is the first in a series of collaborative interviews between The Mud Show and my own Air podcast. I'm here today with UK producer and DJ Alec Falconer.
Hello.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So how was your set earlier?
Nerve-wracking, and first time I've done something like that in, I don't know, where I felt really any kind of pressure behind it for a little while, actually. Yeah, it was, but it was great. It was really nice and had great light, and yeah, it's just fun to play some records. And actually, we had the subs and the big system here as well, so nice to hear a big sound system for the first time in a while.
And so you just moved here last year in 2020, really like sort of mid-pandemic. Was this your first time, I guess, playing out since you moved here?
No, I actually played a Club Divisionaire as well in like September for Low Money Music Love, and that was awesome. It was actually like almost like cathartic experience to be able to like play on the dance floor of Club Divisionaire. Like I played like 6.5 hours or something when I was there. It was
a nice long one.
Awesome. Yeah, it was awesome. The guy after me let me have his set, which is really nice of him. Thanks, Moses.
So we're talking before we sat down today, and I asked you if you had been sort of bored during this pandemic, and you said something that I really liked, which was actually something that your grandmother always tells you, which is that only boring people get bored.
I think it's pretty hard to put down, but yeah, it's just it rings around my ears for sure. That one does ring in my ears.
It seems like it's something that you've kind of taken to heart. Like you seem to have like more ideas and more projects than a lot of people that I know. Like, have you always been this kind of hands in many pots sort of person?
I've always liked cracking on with stuff for sure. My friends call me Captain Clipboard, and they all reckon I absolutely love organising them whenever we go anywhere or do anything. And like my job of like pushing people to be in the right place at the right time, they all think I love it, but I actually don't. But I'm also the one that ends up doing it.
Living up to the nickname.
So yeah, I guess I've always had a bit of a tendency like that.
So I can imagine like growing up in Kent, where you're from in England, I can imagine there was sort of a lot of room for that kind of creativity or imagination, because you kind of don't really have anything else going on. You have to like entertain yourself, would you say?
Yeah, you have got to entertain yourself in Kent, more or less. And yeah, there was like locally, there was like one gig venue where I got to go when I was a lot younger, and on my 11th birthday I went and saw a ska punk band, and it was definitely like a bit of a life-changing moment. And yeah, I mean, from that point on, I did a lot of stuff, I guess, related to music.
I mean, for me personally, it's been like, it hasn't been that many years where I've actually felt like interested in doing a lot of things. Like, I think in high school, I was like quite an underachiever in that sense. But for you, have you always been sort of like in uni, you said that you were learning to mix and you started a label and you were in maybe like a sad indie band with your friends. So what was that time in your life like?
I mean, all those things kind of happened like consecutively, I guess. I was in the bands. I mean, I learned to play drums, and everyone needs a drummer. So I was in indie bands from like when I was about 13 or 14. And that's how I met Rob Amble, who is one of my like long-term collaborators. He joined Slipstream, our band, to be the...
Nice name.
But interestingly, Rob's dad was also in a band called Slipstream, which just goes to show what a generic name for a band it is. And so Rob joined as our like synth/keyboard player, and then he showed me and the rest of us how to use synths and do more interesting stuff than simply record instruments with software, that kind of thing. And then at university, like I learned to mix again. Rob taught me how to mix. Like I kind of owe him a fair amount of that stuff.
Yeah, and then you have another friend, Harry Wills.
So I met Harry Wills in like when we started my first label, which was called Nixwax, which I started with two friends, Ralph and Rob. And we found Harry's music on the not dubstep thread of Dubstep Forum, and he was making disco tunes as OJ Smooth at the time.
Nice name.
Which is
a lot of very strong names going on.
It's a really strong name. I know OJ Smooth's a really good name. I still think it's better than Harry Wills, to be honest. But and so yeah, he was making music like that, and then we started Nixwax. And honestly, we had to Google like how to start a record label. The most in the music biz person we knew was like the guy who worked and sold records to us at Phonica when we made the trip up to London. So like we really just didn't know anyone or anything. Do you know what I mean? Like we just were Googling it really. And obviously it was a bit of a disaster. We didn't really sell very many records. We made a lot of records. We didn't sell very many records. We did like 17 releases. So it's quite a lot of work, but like a lot of them probably still sit in my parents' attic or something like that. I don't know.
And you mentioned when we talked before this interview, you mentioned that your time in Paris was really when you kind of felt your career took on a different sort of level because you were making music every day at home, and then you kind of got more gigs from that. So can you talk a bit about that time in your life?
In France, I had pas des amis, no mates. So that gave me a lot of time and space, basically. It's incredible when you move to a different country and you haven't got to go to like your mate's girlfriend's birthday or whatever it is at the weekend. You haven't got to get back for any family stuff. And it's just you and your life that you've got. Like, you've just got so much time to make music. Mm. And so I was getting up at like 6 in the morning to make music. And then just would make it until about 11 o'clock when I started my day job, which was selling gin and vodka to bars around Paris, which is probably a good industry to be out of during a pandemic.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But yeah, that's definitely what gave me the space. And that was the moment I started making music every day. And that's what changed my production, I would say. Mm.
And so you and Harry and Rob have obviously stayed quite close over the years. You eventually started Phone Tracks, a project together. And then was that kind of just a natural sort of progression from, you know, being friends and learning a label together and things like that? Or how did that project kind of come about?
So that project came about really out of Gozu, the shop in Gozu and Oval Distribution in Frankfurt. Mm-hmm. Rob and Harry both moved to Frankfurt, and I was living in Paris at the time. And even then, like, there was quite a big culture of getting together after work at like 6 p.m. on a Friday. That's when Rob and Harry would go down to the shop, and they had those great speakers in there, and like people would put on their various dubs. So I would be like busily trying to finish tunes for 6 o'clock so that they could get put on in Gozu, which was like the nearest thing to having a tune played in like a club or whatever for me at that moment. And I just was making garage tunes at that time, and then the first ones we made were like, all right, let's do something with this. And then I have to give them credit. I didn't come up with the Phone Tracks concept at all. It wasn't my idea at all. Like the concept at the beginning, there's actually the weird thing about Phone Tracks is that the concept of it never really happened. So the idea was it was like a record with like a mobile phone on the cover and then an English phone number on the other side, which I had the SIM card for. And then if you called up the number, either I'd answer, which I think only happened once, or like you just get an answer phone message, and then the song you would hear on the answer phone message would be what made up the 5th record. So each time you called the number from the first 4 tunes, then the 5th record would be that, and then that was how the project would be done. And we were like, that's so clever. Turns out no one cared about that. They just cared about like the funny feedback sheet, the fact that you had to send like a feedback sheet literally in by post, which a lot of people did, and we got. I
really like that, actually.
Yeah, it was nice. That was a nice touch. And then.
So did you actually get a lot of feedback from that?
Yeah, we got loads. Yeah, lots of people posted them in actually.
Anything helpful?
No, everyone was just sycophantic, to be honest. Like there was absolutely no help in there. But so yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot about Phone Tracks that taught me like a lot about making records for sure, and I think keeping it a secret and letting people think that you're Marcus Sommer to start with is probably one of those secrets if you want to start selling some records.
Sure.
And then obviously we just came out with it later.
So I love the kind of, you know, you mentioned the hotline and the feedback sheet, and I think those sort of, it seems a bit like an inside joke a little bit, and I really like that sort of side of things with this project. So is that sort of a reaction to you feeling like maybe dance music takes itself a bit too seriously sometimes, or are you just kind of up for a laugh?
I mean, dance music definitely does take itself too seriously a lot of the time because, like, I even find it funny when you have to go to an artist entrance and you're like, mate, come on. I don't know, like, I find that stuff, those like labels in dance music, pretty uncomfortable. I'm much more interested in like music for a dance floor. Like when I write music, I'm thinking about that stuff. It doesn't mean I don't want it to move me and to be that stuff. On the point of whether or not it's funny, I've just really got a bad sense of humour for like shit jokes, like that kind of stuff. So, I mean, we even use that SIM card when we do our party Sock It To Me in London, where when you turn up, you get a free pair of socks. Is like, that's like the gimmick. And it's like, it's a really stupid idea, but it kind of works. You know, we put these posters up all around the place saying Sockier connecting people. Then it had the Phone Tracks phone number, and you could text in to the MC for like a shout out. Shout out MC Stride. And so people were just texting him in, and we're just like, you know, shouting out people's birthdays and stuff. It's like, it's good fun. Like, it was like, it was, I really like stuff like that, which is good fun, you know. I don't know, as soon as you see stuff with like black and white photos zoomed in on people's faces and stuff, it turns me right off, like, to be honest. Like, it's just...
And so you mentioned before that at one point people had thought that you guys were all one producer, but it was actually each of you doing your own track. So what was the thinking behind everybody doing their own contribution instead of sort of collaborating all together on all 3 tracks?
Oh, we just all, like, we all lived in different places. Well, I lived in Paris and the other guys lived in Germany, so that kind of made it have to be that way. And we just thought, like, why not put it out under one name? And it's weird because a lot of people thought it was one person, and I've never really understood that, because to me our music all sounds very different, and I can instantly hear a Rob tune, I can instantly hear a Harry tune. Arguably I'm the world's leading connoisseur on Harry and Rob tunes, but I can instantly hear it compared to my own music. But then weirdly other people will come back and say, I even had one guy accusing me of sampling Phone Tracks tunes and being like, mate, it sounds so much like it. And eventually I had to be like, mate, all right, fine, you get it. Like, it's fine, that is me who made these tunes. It was some guy who ran a record shop in Romania who was like grilling me about it. He had amazing ears and like was able to hear what was going on. But for most people, you just put one artist's name and the same artwork on the cover and people kind of make a link that isn't there. You know what I mean? So
the goal wasn't for you guys to have this sort of cohesive sound. In fact, you don't think that you really have that?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, I don't even know what does make up a Phone Tracks sounding tune, you know, like dodgy rewind sounds and like, I don't know, like it's just garage with a little bit of a light touch of sense of humor, I think. I mean, I think some people call it novelty, but...
So you also mentioned earlier that your work as Phone Tracks has really been a project that's taught you a lot about making records. So what did you learn exactly? Like, what lessons have you sort of taken away from that project?
I think before that, the main project I'd done was Nick's Wax, and I'd actually done an ambient cassette label with Harry as well, which was called Panatype. But like, both of those, we were trying to make them objects that were as beautiful as they possibly could be to us and represented the hard work, etc., that we put into them, blah, 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 blah. And like, actually, that's not really interesting for people to buy. Do you see what I mean? Like, and we just somewhat shifted our focus to being like, what's interesting for people, what's a bit different, and that was what made it, that's what was the first sort of step in that shift, if you see what I mean. And that experience then went on very much to inform how I made 2X. With 2X, the idea was like, as a record buyer, I go to record shops and I'll spend like 100, you know, you go in there, you select like 10 records that you think are great, it's like 100 quid, and you're like, I'm not spending 100 quid, I'm gonna spend 40 quid, because I can't afford 100 quid in records right now. And I'll look at them and be like, well, I only like one track on that. I don't really know about the artwork and the whole vibe of that thing, blah, blah, blah. And like, what I tried to do was to play to that process and give people as few reasons as possible to put the record back. So like, no artwork, so you can't be offended by the artwork. Both tracks, only 2 tracks per record. So if you like one of them, you kind of got a 50% buying chance buying it. And then I also made both tunes sound more or less the same. So the idea just being that you just have fewer reasons to put that record back than any other. And I think a lot of people try and make one where it's like one drum and bass tune, one like electro one. Do you know what I mean? You try and like get a sort of, and I think often you can end up, I don't know, for me it's just not, I don't buy records like that personally. I'm like
And so to me that seems like very, like quite obviously quite stripped back, but also sort of a big move that puts a lot of pressure. You know, there's a lot riding on these 2 tracks, for example. Like, were you nervous taking all of that stuff out? Like, did you have a moment where you were like, is this gonna work?
Nah, they bang. Like, if they bang, like, you know, you're fine, really. Like, that's, I mean, those tunes, every one of the ones I signed for 2X is like, I was really just, I was just totally convinced on the tracks, and then as soon as you were convinced on the 2 tracks, there's nothing else to do, you know. All the artwork was done in one go, because it's just 6 different colours of the same thing. We even use the same hand stamp every time. So, I don't know, it was like, it's quite a simple, short project, and then again, having the idea of like, there will only be 6 releases and then it's done, because each colour corresponds to the colour of a Rubik's Cube, was just like, it just makes it easy to start the project and easy to finish it, you know?
Yeah, I was going to say that seems like quite a bit of like finality, like a sort of deadline that you're working with. Does that make it easier for you when you're sort of thinking about the project in the long term kind of thing?
For sure. I don't think I could get started on stuff like that if I couldn't really see the end, you know? Even like Ba Dum Tish now, I've like started it fairly recently, and even now I'm sort of always thinking a little bit about the end, you know, like, because you can't do anything forever and it will just sort of suffocate you in the end if you do. You don't want to build like an albatross, you know. I don't know if that's the right phrase. Is that?
I don't know
an
either.
Albatross, a millstone? I don't know. Anyway, like, And so, yeah, I think having some kind of, I just think if you were trying to start Purlon, you'd never get started because it's impossible to get started on building something that is that. And so.
Yeah, I mean, I interviewed somebody earlier today, actually, and he has a project that he's been working on for about 10 years now. And I asked him at the end of the interview, you know, do you think that this is going to be something you're going to do forever? And he was like, honestly, it seems like a lifetime project to me right now because now I'm so far into it that I just don't really see a way of getting out. So I guess that's not really something that you deal with.
I mean, I guess music's that project, isn't it? Sure. Like, I don't know, I've never really got out of it, like, since it's been the main thing on my mind since I was like 11 years old and went to that gig, you know? That's, it's always been the main thing on my mind. I just didn't let it consume the main place in my life until about 3 years ago. Up until that point, I was always working principally and, you know, doing this inside.
And so sort of on the other side of all, you know, we've been talking about this kind of stripped back mentality that you have with 2X and with Phone Tracks. And now you have Ba Dum Tish, which is sort of on the other side of the spectrum, like very all-encompassing. You know, you've got a lot of labels, you have a lot of artists that you're working with. So why the change of pace in that sense?
So Ba Dum Tish just came about really because I was talking to my sister at the beginning of lockdown, and she'd said that she'd always wanted to do like the boring part of running a company, and I was like, I've got the boring part of a company for you. And so I called up Sandy, Dr. Banana, and we all chatted on the phone for about an hour, and in that hour we explained to Daisy how it works to run a label and stuff, told her what she'd be doing, etc. And we were all agreed. By the end of that, we registered the company the next day. And then, I mean, our first records came out maybe a couple months afterwards, you know, and we just, the first ones we made, I mean, me, my mum and my sister were all stamping them together. And like, it was a family affair, you know, like the lady in the local post office had to stay and came in on Saturday to ship out all our records. Because, you know, it's just like, it's just how it started off. So, and then these things kind of grow, you know. And as we grow, I'm trying to be quite careful with how that is, because I think when you start out, like, everyone judges you on everything you do in dance music. I know it. Like, I only need to hear one crap tune by someone and I'm like, like, it doesn't take it. I don't know. And which is bad, like, because there's so much good stuff that you instantly are afforded the opportunity to pigeonhole something into being like a box that I don't like this. Sure. So sort of that would imply there's some quality control to Ba Dum Tish, which potentially a lot of people would argue there isn't, but like, that's kind of the idea. So the idea was just to set up our own thing, and for me, as someone who had been making their income DJing, and like, you know, the records on top is just, the records were just an expensive business card, you know, like, it's like, oh yeah, sick, I made 500 copies of this and it sold out and now it's expensive or whatever, and that gets you gigs. That's what it was before. And like, that, I don't know, I always felt a bit uncomfortable with quite a lot of that stuff. And so for setting up Ba Dum Tish, it was just about, the main principles were keep it lighthearted, hence Ba Dum Tish, pay our artists. And so I mean, I think we've paid our artists like somewhere around 10 grand so far since we started, which isn't bad. And we, you know, we sort of trying to pay our artists. So, and hence I don't even release on anyone else's labels anymore, because I pay myself better than other labels would pay me, if you see what I mean. And right now I'm not in a position to turn down the cash from writing tunes, you know. So it's good. It just, and there's that, and then the most important part of it is just full creative freedom. There's no one messing up your releases and saying, oh no, I think this is the best track, when you know it's not, you know. Like, I love the joy of being able to mess up my own releases is like, there's no price to put on it. Yeah.
And so what can we expect from these various labels and the artists that you're working for? Like, is there kind of you know, a through line that ties everything together, or yeah, how would you describe it to people who are listening?
The music is like somewhere sitting between garage, breakbeat. There's quite a lot of house. We've got a down tempo label we're starting soon. There's, you know, I think we've got quite a lot of interesting stuff. Right now, no one can hear it because we got rid of our pre-sale business model. Right. So we're having to pay for everything in advance. So we're skint. Which sucks. But it's been like, I don't know, we're like trying to wean ourselves off of other people's money. You know, at the start we put on a release and like pre-sale it, bang, you got loads of cash, and then actually that's not right. That's not the right way to run a company. So now we're making all the records in advance, and then we're just announcing them and they're selling straight away. So that's like a bit of a, that's been, that and Brexit are the things that take up most of my life at the moment.
And so this, like, this interest in sort of keeping control for yourself, is that just because you've felt maybe let down by, you know, bigger labels or distribution companies in the past, or yeah, where does that come from for you?
I wouldn't comment on previous labels and distributors and stuff. Do you know what I mean? Everyone's running their own thing, and like dance music is like a thing that people are typically doing on the side, you know? So like, I don't think that if people are not paying, it's because of malice. It's just because of poor organization, probably, that kind of thing. But for me, I wanted to make it pretty fair and easy. And so like, and you kind of realize as soon as you do any of the basic maths that there is money being made on records. It's just getting swallowed up at various stages of the process. And so for me, I just wanted to like take control of all of that. I'm not really that fussed about the money, but I just like to be able to pay we pay like 150 quid a track basically to anyone on any of our regular labels, which is like, it's a lot more money than I've mostly ever been paid for making music, you know. And also we pay that same fee to whether you're some big artist or someone who's never put anything out before, provided we can pay you it. I think it's just about showing people respect for the time that they've spent to create their art, you know.
So would you say that working with friends, as you've been doing on all of these projects, is that sort of also helping you keep control a bit? Like, I imagine that trust plays a big role in that sense.
And there's not really much to trust. Most of your friends, I'm only taking projects that I just think are good. I don't sign any contracts with anyone about like signing their label or anything. Like, if I think the release stinks, I won't sign it. Like, but I'm also willing to trust other people's judgment, you know. And then if it sells horribly, I'll be there to say, you know, and rub it in their faces, like a good,
like a good friend.
Yeah, like a good friend I am. Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, it seems almost a bit contradictory, but this whole like sort of keeping control for yourself almost gives you more freedom in the sense that, you know, you can do these kind of the hotline and the sort of more fun things that maybe wouldn't get approved if you were working with other people. Like, would you say that this control is actually giving you more freedom in the end?
Yeah, I mean, getting those things, the only person we have to get them past is my sister Daisy, who's like not, you know, she bless her, she got me into a lot of dance music and took me to a lot of parties and took me to a lot of gigs when I was younger and stuff. But like, music isn't her world principally. She's got a 1-year-old child, you know. So me and Sandy are definitely the ones trying to like convince her on the various ideas that we do. You know, we made like 1,000 copies of our first mix CD, which we gave out in everyone's parcels for the first release. And like, it's quite hard to convince Daisy to spend like, I don't know, whatever, 400 quid making a bunch of CDs we're going to give away for free. But like, it's nice to make those touches, and just I think probably people think that those things are gimmicky. Like, I'm here wearing my gimmicky socket to me socks, and like, yeah, it's gimmicky, but like, it's not meant to be about gimmicks. It's not meant to take away from the music. It's just about showing that we have like a lot of love for what we're trying to do, and trying to show that we're just giving it that extra bit of love and attention. And so far, like, the response for that has been positive.
Great. And so with these projects, how much are you thinking about the sort of scene around you? Like, is that filtering into it at all? Like, are you looking at what other people are doing or sort of trends or whatever? Or are you just truly like staying the course and doing what you want?
I don't really listen to much new music. I've started doing it now because we sell other people's records on our site. So my friend Nabil like is helping me a lot with that, and I'm listening to quite a lot of new music. And bloody hell, what I'm hearing is absolutely fantastic. It's great. Like, I'm really loving all the new music, and I don't know why I've neglected it for so long and spent all my time just focusing on desperately finding like dusty records from '93 when there's so much good stuff being made now. And so, I mean, the rest of the scene around me, like, I don't really know. Like, you're exposed to it in so much as when you play gigs with other people and that. And I have like a huge amount of respect and love for like all the other music I hear from people around me. You know, my studio is in like a building which is like an ex-Stasi offices, like 8 floors of just noise. It's just like, and you walk through each building and it's just like some like crazy thrash metal and stuff going on. Then you go to the next one and it's like some crazy techno or whatever, and like, it's wicked. It's just like piles and piles and piles of noise, and like, it's annoying when you're trying to do a mix down, but it's absolutely awesome because like, all of these people are just equally as caught up in their little weird world of music as I am with my little world of music, where the thing that makes me happy is like high-pitched snares. The thing that makes them happy is like over-distorted guitars or whatever. Like, it's great. Like, I think that's a good thing, you know.
And finally, looking to the future, what other ideas do you have in store? I'm sure there's a fair few.
There's always lots of ideas, but they're not necessarily good ones, and I can't necessarily share them. I guess the main things that will be keeping me busy are making new records. We've got a lot of new stuff coming out. There's Sock It To Me 3, which I've written with Harry. Me and Harry got a new record coming out under our alias, got another new alias coming out. I've got a full EP coming out on Jeezel. Made a record with Anna Wall recently as well. So quite a lot of music coming out, I guess. And I mean, I hope maybe this summer return to gigging. Sounds like it could be on the cards, depending.
Hope so.
Yeah, I mean, you know, otherwise, I think I'll be very happy and very appreciative if I get to go and play again. The world does not owe me a goddamn DJ. So like, can only be thankful for what you get, you know.
Alec, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.